You're listening to the Jersey Guys Podcast, the show that talks about hard rock, heavy metal, AOR, and West Coast music. In-depth conversation and special guests are always on tap, so settle in and turn it up. Now, here are your hosts, Tom and Mark.
Hey everybody, this is Mark Ballo from the Jersey Guys Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Tom Coyne as always, and today we've got special guest Adam Holland from the band Valentine. Welcome, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Good to hear your voices.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And we want to, basically talk a little bit about Valentine and the whole career and touch on other stuff too, this Open Skies, Steve Augeri Band, and everything that you've been involved with over the years.
My pleasure. I'll do my best to, I'll do my best to remember it all and share it with you. I'll do my best. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Tom, you wanted to start with something that we talked about a little bit before?
Yeah, most of the times when we have a guest, I always like to ask, personally as a fan myself, and also I think there's a lot of people that like to know also, how did the band get started? How did you meet Hugo, the other guys in the band? How did you originally get the whole thing off the ground? That's
a great question. And so back in the, early 80s, there was a Long Island circuit. It was obviously the time of early MTV and, just the beginning of that sort of, Bon Jovi-ish days, 85, 86. And so I was playing with Gerard. It was first me and Gerard since we were about 14. We played in our first high school cover band, did the high school dances, whatever, the concert halls at the school. And then we met Neil, and I don't even know how we met Neil, to tell the truth. And we started to play. By the time we were already at the end of high school, we were playing a couple nights a week on the Long Island circuit with another singer. And it was kind of cool. We were young kids, but some other big Long Island band called Equinox had their gear stolen, and somehow, I don't know how we knew, they said, listen, we'll let you play every gig with us, but we need to use your gear. And we said, all right, sure. Meanwhile, we were still in high school. We had no idea what the hell we were getting ourselves into, and it was 3 nights a week we'd stroll in 6 a.m. and go to school. It was not very productive, but it was a lot of fun. And then, we wanted to do something not necessarily heavier, but more like we all grew up on that Boston Foreigner, sort of, Bad Company, that feeling, Journey, obviously. And then through Neil knew another friend of his who knew Hugo. I think they played in the band together. And then obviously that was sort of the, sealed the deal. He liked and wanted to do the same type of music. And then in the middle of this, Craig also, through some just various people we knew, we met Craig, and we all wanted to play the same type of stuff, but we all wanted to play originals. Long Island was really a cover scene at the time, and we did not want to do that. That was sort of our bond, which really brought us all together at that 85, 84. And that was how that's really through just mutual friends in Long Island and, meeting different musicians, etc., is how the band formed.
Now, when did the Valentine name come about?
That's a good question. Somewhere, I'm not sure when it did. We used to be After Image, then it became Valentine. And I don't know when it changed, but it was before, the labels. It was definitely, we played the clubs as Valentine. So probably 85, 86. No, one last piece of the puzzle is that we did, being that we wanted to play originals and the Long Island scene wasn't really conducive to that, we made a quick trip out to Los Angeles thinking we'd relocate to be part of the original scene on the Sunset Strip. And we learned a lot. I mean, it was really just what we wanted. We're this is the place we should be. This is the right vibe. But, but living was just, got complicated. Living became the priority, not the music. So we brought everything we learned from that time out there, maybe half a year, and brought it back to Long Island and decided we're only going to play originals and we don't care if we only play, one club, whatever, and we're going to work on our writing and our demos. And that was the pivotal moment for us that really pushed us to the next point.
Basically we're talking to you today because of the new album, the new release by Valentine, which is called Demos from the Attic. And it's on 20th Century Music. And just tell us a little bit about how that whole thing came about, because I guess it literally was songs that were found in an attic, right?
Literally, it really was. And the cover of the CD is literally a picture of the cassettes and the DAT tapes that Craig and Gerard found in their basement and attics. And Craig took that picture in front of, I guess, one of our amps.
Huh.
Those really are the tapes. It's pretty wild. So during the COVID time, people obviously were home, and social media really became sort of the communication point for everybody. And 20th Century approached me first. I'm probably more on social media than the rest of the guys about doing something like this. They've done it in the past with other bands. Did we have anything? And we were like, wow, what a great idea. And we weren't really sure what we had, because a lot of the songs we had written for the second Valentine record, a few of them did go on to the Open Skies record, and a few leftovers made it on to Soul Salvation, which came out in 2010.
Okay.
But we realized there was a whole nother set of really 80s songs that never made it past the 80s that we had not used, and this is that batch of songs.
Now, the songs that were on this release, Demos from the Attic, are they from a different period? Like, are they cover a certain period, or were all recorded around the same time?
They're kind of over a 3-year period. We recorded the Valentine record in 1988, even towards 89, towards the end, even though it didn't come out till 90. And right after that period, we started to write. We since we were sort of in this holding pattern, label nonsense, we decided to start writing and recording just to be ready for the next record when it came. We didn't know what, you didn't know, but that's what you do. We write. So we had a few dollars, we bought some gear, and we started to write and record and just sort of stockpile these songs. But no one really was at this point guiding us, because we hadn't presented them to anybody yet, because they were just the record wasn't even out yet, so we weren't even thinking about the second record. We were just trying to get the first one out.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we started to write and record, and these songs are the product of those sessions. So I guess 88, 89, 90, maybe into 91, some of them, but that period post, right after the Valentine and right during when it was out.
Yeah. Well, now talk a little bit about, you mentioned that, I know the Valentine story, basically you guys were signed to 2 major labels before
Correct.
Your debut even came out. Talk a little bit
Correct.
about that.
We got signed, when we got signed, it was still the heyday of the 80s, and we were really, in that mode of, not really the metal, but more like the AOR version, like that Bon Jovi-ish, Def Leppard-ish stuff. Mm-hmm. And we were so again, and once we got Hugo, the songs clicked, and like I said, post that Los Angeles trip, we really wrote most of the first Valentine record and made some little demos, and that's what got us management. Everything happened really quickly, and we got major management, and then our managers managed Neil Kernan, who we became friendly with, and he's like, let's make some real demos. Those real demos got us to Columbia, and the momentum was just boom, 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 boom. It was happening. And so everything was, you couldn't have been, it was just a big budget deal. We were living large, it was great. Then not typical, I don't know what you say, I don't know if it's typical, but the record, the president of Columbia changed in the middle of us recording this record, and he wanted to do different direction. And maybe he saw the 90s coming, who knows, what I'm saying, but it's hard to say.
Yeah.
We were, in the group with Firehouse and Warrant and Heaven's Edge. They were all, with us there. Heaven's Edge stayed on the label and snuck out their record, but they got no support.
Yeah.
And somehow we got dropped, but it wasn't like we got, dumped. He just didn't want to deal with the record, so he let Giant buy the record, and we went over to Giant with our A&R guy. It was a pretty unusual situation, which wasn't bad, because our A&R guy who was supporting us was still with us. So it was still, we had someone, there. Yeah. And that's how we ended up over at Giant. Then they came out on Giant. And they listen, they were a new label at the time, and they were, even though Irving and Azoff was running it, and they were part of Warner Brothers, they were still sort of self-contained.
Yeah.
But having said that, for what the time was, they did a video for us. We didn't get a lot of tour support, but we did a lot of press. We did as much as we could, regional touring, and regionally, excuse me, couldn't say that word there. So that's how we ended up on 2 labels before we even came out with one record. It was,
That's an interesting story because I mean, you hear that though, what you said, and you've heard that with other bands from that era,
Right.
and all eras actually. But how a new personnel comes into a label,
Right.
they want to bring their own people in. They they don't want the bands that were there before them because they didn't have anything to do with them.
Correct. And by the way, his rock band, he went with like a Mariah Carey and Alice in Chains, and I guess he was right because both of those went on to tremendous success. So
sure. Now, when 20th Century first announced the new demos from the Attic album, I thought it's about a year or so ago. I thought there was some mention that there was maybe 2 or 3 albums worth of material. Is that true?
There was 2 albums worth of material. We actually had 2 full discs worth of material. However, we didn't feel they were all. These were demos. These weren't. They were like writing demos. So some of them were just, I don't know. Some of them, they were like 2 versions of the same song. They were, what I'm saying? There was a lot of sort of things that were just there to be dealt with later, like to be culled through. So it's true. There was 2. We started out with almost like 20 songs and got it down to this batch because we just didn't want to have 2 CDs, and we thought the other material wasn't really up to par.
Oh, okay.
To be put out publicly. So we put out what we thought was the best of the bunch.
Gotcha. Now, I know Tom wanted to talk about something with kind of like the transition from the original debut Valentine album, right, to Open Skies, right? We were just talking about that, Tom?
Yes, I did want to talk to you about that. First, I just wanted you mentioned Equinox, and that was a band that I can't tell you how many times I saw in Long Island. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I used to go to the clubs in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right. So then you go early 80s. Right. So early 80s, that was, we were, little, I mean, God, I think we were 10th and 11th grade. So by the end of 11th and 12th grade, we were playing that circuit with Equinox. Looking back, we were like, holy crap, what the hell, what did we get ourselves into? But it was
Equinox was a terrific band. I actually even saw them at Lamore's one time too in the early 80s.
They were great. I bet you probably saw us opening up with it.
That's what you were saying this. Exactly. I was wondering that. That's actually what was going through my mind.
They were like one of the first bands to cover Rush. They did such a great job covering Rush, and that's why they were like, wow. They were good. They were great. I forget their names, but they were very. It was they were so nice to us, these little young kids. We did them a favor, and they really did us a bigger favor. It was really we had such a good time. Those are great memories. A lot of fun.
And I used to see Zebra in Long Island before they were signed, when they used to do an entire Led Zeppelin.
I used to go see Zebra and Twisted Sister at Rockaway's.
Rockaway's. I used to go to Hammerheads and Rum Bottoms.
Yeah, all those places.
My father's place.
Yes, but I played them all and been to them all, and that was the scene. And I was just at the age, somehow, my license, I was able, before they still had the paper driver's licenses, and I was able to, somehow, I don't know, somebody I knew who was an artist changed my 5 to an 8 or something. I don't know.
Oh, really?
But either way, I was able to sneak in to the club. I was just
unfortunately, I'm old enough that I was able to go legitimately.
That's funny.
But I wanted to ask you about Open Skies, because I go back to when that record came out, and actually the first time I listened to this record were with 2 of my friends from Zigzag, one of which is Vinny and the other is Phil, who was the owner of the record store. And I remember us listening to it and realizing, looking at the inside liner notes, that it was all the guys in Valentine. And we loved the record, but it was, nobody knew that the band had shifted name. So what made you guys do something that abrupt at that point?
Well, we start, so it's a good question. And so let me do my best to explain it. So, obviously, the 80s period of music just ended, and we had already started. We were so fortunate, and again, I always say this about my career. I'm so grateful for all the things that we had. We had 2 deals at that point, which is already like, holy crap, that's like a lifetime worth of record deals. So we were like, how the hell are we going to get a 3rd record deal? We were like, what? But we had great management. They believed in us, and they was like the same thing. They're like, just keep writing and writing. And we had Hugo, who had the voice that, no matter what genre and what time and place, when you heard Hugo sing, someone wanted to have him on their label. So we were very lucky, and I'm always grateful for that. So Richie Zito started a new label, and he, was really a different type of producer than Neil Kernon. really from the hit oriented, like, Eddie Money, Cheap Trick. Cher, really a different type of a producer. And he's like, I think you guys could evolve into something different than just this 80s hair band. He's like, so I'm going to sign you. We're like, okay. And I want you just to write and explore. We're going to set you up with different people. We're going to go to different places. We're going to put different environments, try different instruments, and just let's see what happens. I think that this could be something that could work. So we were like, it was incredible. What a great, think about that. What a great opportunity for us. So, and we knew that the 80s was like, you couldn't even bring up the 80s, so we went with it and we enjoyed the process. And over the, couple of year process, we did evolve. And then when it ended, we weren't really like this isn't Valentine. We can't say this. It doesn't feel like a Valentine record. And we wanted to rock in the way that Lenny Kravitz rocked. Like if the song, we're really, there's some light moments on the record, and then the rock songs like Candy from Strangers, Every Day of My Life, None of It Matters, Golden Years, there's probably a few more in there, had a different kind of feel to them. Like, that we didn't want to be a grunge band. We were not even ever thinking of that. We still had melody to us in Hugo's voice. So that's how it happened. Then we wrote one of my favorite songs, which I love, called the title track, Open Skies. Yeah. We wrote with the great guy, Glenn Burtnick, who's a great, wonderful artist, songwriter. And I don't know, we heard that title and we're like, it just felt like a new beginning for us, Open Skies, and a new, like, sort of after the rain. I don't know, it just felt right. I can't really. And the label also everyone felt the same way, like this. We don't think we should call it Valentine because we don't want people to have a tainted memory of something that isn't really, maybe it's not that.
Yeah.
So it happened. I can't say it was like no one slammed their fist down on the table and said, you better do this. It sort of felt like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, especially like you said, the scene was changing so much at that point, or it already changed. And it was like, almost like when people looked at the 80s bands, they associated with, like you didn't want to touch that or be a part of that anymore because that had moved on.
So it wasn't that we were trying to trick anybody or try to pull a fast one. That's what it was. And, we had a different drummer and I don't know, not that changed that much of the feel of the band, but just it was a different chapter. Let me put it that way. It was a new chapter.
Yeah. Now, when you guys, I was lucky enough to see Open Skies here in New Jersey. And I know at the time you guys were doing the song Soul Salvation, right? So that was an
Correct.
Open Skies song, which eventually, of course, ended up on the Soul Salvation Valentine album, right?
Correct. That's correct. We didn't record it for Open Skies. We wrote it for Open Skies. I wish we recorded it. I love that song. I still do. And we did. We played it live. We wanted that. We always loved it. So we're going to play it.
That's great. Now, what happened? It just kind of, did the scene and the sound with music change so much that there just wasn't, a second album to be had, or what was it?
It's a shame. I think that's a good question. Really, how did it end? Like, why didn't we do a second Open Skies record? And I think that at the time, the answer came out. We had the first single, Every Day of My Life, did pretty well at rock radio. We toured on that single for that first year. And then our sort of ballad pop single came out, and it did okay, but then it really never did what it was supposed to do. And the label, they didn't want to make a second record, and they dropped us, which we were like, holy shit, give us another chance. But they didn't want it. They didn't want it. And so that was disappointing. I must say that I think we should have done a second Open Skies record.
Now, personally, after that ended, it's what, 1994-ish or so at that point?
It was 95. 95 is when it all, yeah.
Okay. Now you personally, you stayed involved with music as far as from a songwriting standpoint, right?
Correct. The sort of end 95 to like 99, I didn't know what to do, but myself and Tom Mayo, who was the drummer in Open Skies, we both lived in Rhode Island. So we formed another band. Actually, Gerard was in that band, but Tom was the singer. It was called Third from the Sun. Actually, the songs are on my website. It's pretty cool. That was kind of 90s sounding. And we literally played locally. We went back to that was weird. We went from touring in a tour bus, all over the place, being in just home. That was really wow. That was the strangest period of it all. You went, spent 15 years sort of in this mode, and all of a sudden you're back to playing the corner club, which we did it, because so I always continued to play and write. And then I had some other friends who were writers, just not artists, who had told me that by the way, I always loved country music, and the 80s sort of vibe became country music. Those songs, I don't know.
Oh, definitely.
Either way, a lot of people in that late 90s, early 2000s, rock guys,
yeah,
Nashville was kind of looking for to bring that mixture with their country writers.
Right. Yeah.
So a good friend of mine who she introduced me to some people, and I knew a bunch of people who were there. And I just various connections. I just took a couple of meetings. I made some demos, and I got involved with it. I was able to become sort of the New York guy for a great publishing company called Murrah Music. And this guy, Roger Murrah, was he wrote all those early Alabama songs. His most famous song is, Al Jarreau, Wearing This Love Together. But he became a lot of these independent publishers. That was the scene down there in that time. It was really a golden era for country music. It was a great time. CDs were still being sold.
Yeah.
Publishing was making money. It was a great time, and they let me, a guy from New York, in the door, and I was so grateful. And what was so cool at that time, I was a big Rascal Flatts fan. One of the guys who wrote most of that record, he was a writer at this publisher, so I wrote with him.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Luke Bryan got his start at this publishing company. I wrote with him, and a bunch of Rachel Proctor, all these other, there was a lot of other artists and writers in this little publishing house, and it was just I was like in heaven. It was great. I never got anything published, but I got a lot of things on hold. Mm-hmm. So it was tough. I got discouraged after a while. I'm like, wow, how is this going to pan out? So but yeah. Truthfully, I enjoyed that period of my life tremendously. It was really a growth period. I learned so much about writing and recording, and just watching these guys in Nashville work. I was like, holy crap, incredible.
Yeah. How long did that period last for you?
That was about 5 years. I did it from 2000 to almost 2005. 99, I guess 2005. I was going back and forth. I never moved there. I used to kind of go back, a month here and go back and forth. It was a little crazy, but that's all I could do at the time. I didn't want to. My daughter was born. I wasn't ready to move there yet. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, because around that time, when you talk about a lot of the 80s bands sort of migrated to the Nashville scene, and right. I really got into a lot of that contemporary country stuff myself. Right. You mentioned Rascal Flatts. Right. I love that band.
That's exactly the term. I really enjoy that contemporary country. That's exactly right, which they call it now like Y2 country. That's the Sirius station,
Yeah.
That's like the beginning of that's when the beginning of Keith Urban,
mm-hmm.
Blake Shelton was a young guy. All the that sort of more rock oriented. And what I loved about it, they were all great singers, and every musician was great. And I loved that there was a space between all the instruments. You could hear everything, and everything was produced. There was nothing. Everyone was A-game players and singers. Yeah. I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe when I went down there, and even making the demos, I was like, holy crap, this place, I was just blown away by the talent down there. And I tried to absorb as much as I could from that period.
Yeah, that's great. Now, moving on. So you said that lasted up to around about the 2005 period. It wasn't that long after that Valentine regrouped, which was 2007, Correct. I believe. And you guys did the Firefest festival over
Correct.
in the UK, right?
Right. So what happened, what led into that was that in the early 2000s, that's when tribute bands started. That's the first time there were really these tribute bands. Bands that played only one other band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Hugo just wanted to play. He had made 2 really great solo records already, and actually we all I don't know, but I played on some of those records and wrote some songs. It was, they were good. They were great. And then he wanted to play. He's like, I look like Steve Perry. People always say it. He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. He's like, okay, let's see if I can do a tribute band. So he wanted to play it, and he did one, and he invited me to play in that tribute band. I was like, at first I was like, what the hell is even a tribute band? Either way, I obviously joined that band with him, and we had the best time. And Gerard managed that band, so here we were together again as guys. But we always stayed in communication. Actually, I wrote a lot of songs in Nashville with Hugo, so we always were in. We never had a breakup, falling out. We just had these periods. So we started to play again. We had a great time, and it was, you said, we played that Canal Room. We used to travel all over the country. It was a great, I'm like, we were having the best time and playing Journey songs.
Yeah.
So now people saw Hugo and I on stage together, and they knew Gerard was involved. They're like, oh my God, is Valentine getting back together? And that's when we got invited to do Firefest. We're like, what the hell? Sounds great. Let's go. And we went in 2008, and we didn't know what to expect, and we all brought our families and wives. We're like, let's at least we'll get a trip to Europe at least. We didn't know what to expect out of it, and we were just blown away at the reception from that Firefest. We were like, holy crap, who knew? It was pre-social media. You didn't know where your fans were at the time. We had no idea we had this following over there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we, the last podcast that we did, we had a guest, Kenny Dubman from the band Prophet. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Sure.
And they also played the Firefest a little bit later around, I think it was
Right.
2012, 2013. But I've heard this and you just said it and Kenny said it last week. And it's so many bands that went over and played at the Firefest just were just blown away by the reaction.
Right.
They didn't realize
Right.
that they were even such,
Correct.
a commodity at that point.
So the first one we played, besides our own set, which was we were seriously stop playing. We're the crowd was louder than us. We were it's incredible. But now Taiketo headlined. I'm I didn't even know they were still together. By the way, and the week before, Tesla was over there. I'm these bands are still playing. I'm what world? Where am I right now? And by the way, Taiketo was so good. I'm what? I was just, that took me such a while. I was so stunned by the whole experience. All of us were holy crap. Why haven't we been here? What the hell were we thinking? So literally, we went back and we recorded it. We were so excited. We started to record a new CD, and then we came back again to Firefest, I think, the next year.
Yes. Yeah, in 2008 you played again.
Right. And then that's was a segue this year, because at one of those, Tall Stories played, and that's when Steve Augeri played at one of those Firefests.
Yes, and it was on the same year that you guys played, right at the same time.
Well, we played twice, so I'm not sure which one it was. Or maybe the first or second.
Yeah.
But then in 2013, we went back to Firefest one more time. Steve Augeri headlined. He was the main band. That was one of my favorite gigs of my life. How about that?
Yeah. Now at that point, you were with Steve Augeri, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. So you got to play it 3 times.
I did. Yes. Trust me. It was such a great. Kieran, God bless that guy.
Oh yeah. Now that led to you did the show in 2007, and then you said you came back the following year. But at that point, you guys had recorded the Soul Salvation album, right? Or recorded the Soul Salvation album.
Correct. By the way, we did a DVD. Kieran, they produced a DVD from our set. We did some overdubs in that. Then we started to record Soul Salvation, and that's when the first time we went and dug back into some older demos. And again, Soul Salvation was really an Open Sky song. We put that on. Love Song, I think, was on there, and then Dream on the Way. I can't remember the Soul Salvation songs, but a lot of those Soul Salvation songs were written in the same time, demos from the attic. I'm a full segue there. How about that?
What about the song Wait? I love that song.
That song, okay, that's the oldest song. Wait was on the original demo we got signed with at Columbia. That was that was a really old song.
So, wow, really? That old? And
by the way, we recorded it for the Columbia record, but we didn't put it on the record. I don't know why.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Glad I asked about that.
That's the oldest. That's probably the oldest song. That and Someday are probably the oldest Valentine songs.
Wow. That's really cool. So now that brings us up to, I guess, you joined. Tom said, and we were talking about this before we went on air, that he saw you guys a number of times with the Journey, the tribute band that you guys were doing. And I saw you guys a few times too. But after that all kind of, I guess, I don't want to say dissolved, because they obviously continued to carry on. But you transitioned over to playing with Steve Augeri, who, of course, was the singer in Journey for a period there.
Right.
So how did that all come about?
So I'll have to back up a second. And it's great. So everything overlaps, and we didn't even know it was overlapping. So before Steve was in Journey, he was in a band called Tall Stories, which was they were on Epic, a great record. I recommend that record. They were not even an '80s band at all. They were almost like Candlebox, cool. They were really great. I mean, a great record. But I don't know what happened. They did one record, Epic. Who knows?
He was in Taikedo too, if you remember.
Correct.
More overlapping.
I do, because you know why? Because when Steve Augeri played at Firefest, we played Taikedo, and so sometimes we play those songs. So
right.
Let me back up. So when Open Skies toured with Mr. Big, on the same tour, we would like flip-flop. We were on for a while, off for a while, back on, and Paul Stories also toured with Mr. Big.
Yes, I remember that.
And then our managers, I don't know, our manager Louis Levin somehow knew their manager. We knew of each other, even though we weren't like buddies. We all knew who each other were, and were in a circle of this Mr. Big tour. Fine. Then he went into Journey, and obviously a decade, 95, whatever, 96 to 2006, whatever that decade was, the Journey. Then here we are back at Firefest in the 2000s, post his Journey run. Mm-hmm. And so we meet again. And now the Journey tribute band, Evolution, played the opening party for Rock of Ages, the musical. And then we also did these monthly cast parties where if you had a ticket from the show, you'd come next door to this little club bar thing, and the cast would be there, and maybe one other 80s musician. I think JJ from Twisted came one night, Steve Augeri came one night, the guys, various different 80s people would, and we'd all jam. Like it was like a loose, it wasn't like a real show, it was like a loose bar scene. It was a lot of fun, by the way.
Yeah, kind of like they used to do that at the China Club for a period.
Correct. I forgot. Was that it wasn't the real China Club. It was like another version of the China Club. But you're right.
Okay.
I couldn't think of the name. That's right. So Steve, on one of those nights, jammed with us, right? So, and then I guess him and Gerard were talking. I didn't even know this. I learned all this later. Steve wanted to put a band together. Gerard's like, well, I'll help you. You know what I'm saying? So then it turned out that the guys like Craig was playing in a different band. So myself, Gerard, Craig, and Mikey, who was playing in Valentine and Evolution, we kind of did a few gigs with Steve. Mm-hmm. With Hugo's blessing, we tried it. It just evolved into the Steve Augeri Band. And then my good friend, Robbie Hoffman, who was my sub for the band, came into Evolution. They became Voyage, and all that. But that was like 2010, and we all went on to continue on.
Now, I know that Steve has released over probably starting around maybe 2015 for a period of a couple years. He was putting out some singles.
Correct.
And is that stuff that you were ever involved with at all?
Some of them. I think Riverside, Craig and I wrote that with him. Some of them we did, and some of them he just had stuff he wrote. And let me confess, right now we're actually putting the finishing touches. There's a Steve Augeri record coming out pretty soon, because that was another COVID thing we did.
I wanted to ask you about that. Are these songs that were the singles, or are these brand new songs?
No, these are new songs. So like demos, in COVID, everyone had a lot of time and needed to, get their creative energy out. So everyone took to their home studios. We all went back to our archives. We had written some stuff early on with Steve, and then we just kicked it around. I don't know. And then we also, Craig and I are always writing. We wrote a bunch of stuff during the pandemic. Steve we all went through every scrap of an idea we ever had that we never finished. We brought it out and is this good? Is this not good? And then so those songs are going to be on the new Steve Augeri record.
Oh, wow.
Most of them, I'd say 50% are Steve's songs. And by the way, which is really cool, there's a couple of songs he wrote with the guys in Journey, Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon, that are going to be on this record. And so I got to play on those songs, which was a treat for me.
Oh, wow.
And then we wrote a couple, Craig and I and Steve wrote a bunch of songs. Steve and I wrote songs. So there's a hodgepodge of stuff. And it's a Steve Augeri record. It's definitely, a little, I don't know, poppier. It has kind of a wide spectrum of stuff on there.
Wow. And that'll see the light in 2022?
I think so, yeah. I don't want to, it should. I mean, it's really, there's maybe one or two more songs that have to be mixed or tweaked, sort of finishing recording type of things,
Yeah. Now you guys got back to, obviously everybody had a long layoff with the COVID for the last year and a half. You guys got back to playing some shows again recently?
We did. We had a very busy summer. It was almost like once everybody got vaccinated, it was like the floodgates opened, and we were really busy from mid-June to mid-September. And then, like many others, COVID popped back up. Actually, our camp, we got it, so we had to cancel a couple of shows. Then we did notice probably 3 shows or 4 shows that, got pushed to 2022. So you could just see people were like, maybe, it sort of came back again. So,
Yeah.
but we were lucky. We had a very good summer, and we just played recently in Florida. We have a couple more shows for the year, and then we'll, start the schedule again for 2022.
Yeah, sure. Now, I wanted to touch on this because I wanted to talk about it, and I was telling Tom about this right before we went on air. Back at the beginning of this year, and maybe this was kind of something that was born out of COVID, I don't know, you tell me, but you started your own podcast named
Correct.
Band
Oh, yeah,
Forever. Tell us
correct.
how that all started. How did you get involved in wanting to do a podcast?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Well, like I said, in COVID time, sounds so funny, like this era. But you know what? We were home, and I was kind of enjoyable in some weird way to get to like be creative. A lot of times I don't have so much time to sit around and be creative. So two things. First of all, I started to listen to a lot of podcasts, and a couple in particular. I always like to learn something, whether it's a history thing or about somebody. I like to watch documentaries too. I like to learn how did this guy get from high school to like, how did Elton John, how did it happen? Like, I love those kind of stories. So
Yeah.
I also enjoy doing the physical part of recording. I love editing. I actually like doing that. I used to be a sound designer somewhere in the middle of all this stuff we just talked about. I used to edit sound for a company. So I like it. I'm pretty good at it. So my thought was like, I wonder what it's like to do a podcast. First of all, could I produce one? I wonder if I don't even know how to do that. But then at the same time, I was like, there are a lot of stories, by the way, like my own included. I know so many musicians, like Reggie from Heaven's Edge, like my friend John Levin from Dokken, who have been in the industry in various bands, various labels, stayed in the business, even though they're not famous. Like I always use Eddie Trunk as like a benchmark. We're not Eddie Trunk level, but there are still guys working for decades in this industry in various forms, and they have, crazy Spinal Tap stories. So I'm like, I think, and there's a guy I have to give credit to, Joey Casada from the band ZO2 and his show Z-Rock. Mm-hmm. He was in the Steve Augeri Band for a moment or two, and he wrote this great book, and I was like, holy, it was such a great story. I'm like, wow, I didn't know what a life this guy had and all these things he'd done. So all that came together, and I was like, I want to tell the stories of guys who aren't getting their stories maybe told. So, and that's how it came to be.
I think it's a great, I've listened to a number of the episodes so far, and I always enjoy them. And I think it's a great, the concept that you came up with about, you talk about like yourself and other guys that you do on the podcast they're kind of like lifers, right? That, like you said.
That's exactly the term I used. Right. And I took that term from, Zach Wilde always said, the lifers. There's no choice. You guys are doing this whether you like it or not. You're addicts. And that's me. And yes, the lifers. I call them the Band Forever lifers. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great concept, and I really enjoy it. And yeah, I've got to catch up on a few episodes that I've missed, but I've listened to most of them so far.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Mine, I don't do a weekly thing. I try and do once a month, and mine are a little longer because I get into some detail, and I also I like to put music in there. Whether it's my own music or the artist's music, or some just musical interlude. I always find that helps. I enjoy it, so I put that in. So it takes me a little longer to do an episode than just like recording it and putting it out. I go through it, I edit it. I probably could do it shorter, but I just maybe enjoy the process. So I go into a little more documentary vibe than just typical podcast vibe. So
yeah, definitely. And yeah, definitely everybody out there listening, you got to check it out. You're on Spotify, right? Apple. It's
all the usual places.
The usual places. It's Band Forever, and just check it out. It's a great podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. My next episode, I have my childhood friend John Levin, who is in Dokken, and besides, I'm a huge fan of his as a guitar player and a musician. He's a great guy. I've known him since we're like 14, 15. So he has and what a great story and a good guy. So that, guys like that. Most of my guests have been people I know. That's sort of the first round of people I went through.
Yeah. That one should
be. Is
he
he a Long Island guy, John Levin?
He is, yeah. We grew up in the 5 towns of Long Island.
I never realized that.
I knew he was a New York guy.
Yeah. You know, he is a Long Island guy. Yeah.
Wow. Didn't he played in with Greg Smith? Didn't he?
He
Yes.
He has played with Greg Smith. You'll hear the podcast. Most since he's in high school, he and Greg have been playing, and it's a crazy. Greg Smith and who's for Alice Cooper? What's his name?
Tommy Hendrickson.
Yes, Tommy Hendricks. They are the key to his musical career. So it's a funny story. But they've all been playing together since, back in the high school days.
Well, Greg Smith was in the final chapter of Rainbow back in the day.
He was. He talked about an incredible career. Now, by the way, let's go full circle. Greg Smith plays with Hugo and Robbie in Voyage.
Yes, I saw them.
That's right.
Saw them in a club in Manhattan, somewhere in Midtown, about 4 or 5 years ago.
So we're all intertwined, into some crazy world. We're all still stuck together. So.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the Long Island scene, though, right? I mean, it was a great scene. I mean, there was a lot of. I personally, I was always born and raised. I was always a Jersey guy, but I mean, I know, being that close, I know, and Tom talks about it, and it was such a great scene. There was so many guys that came out of there with a lot of stories that people never really heard.
I agree, and you know what? Interesting. Speaking of, yes, I agree, and I am very fortunate to have grown up in that '80s club scene. It was really cool with the Zebras, the White Lion, the Twisted Sister. What a great vibe. Good Rat. How about the Good Rats? Incredible, right?
Sure.
How about George Cintron? Do you remember him?
Oh my George, he's one of the first guys I ever saw in a club. By the way, played with him, Greg Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
So Greg Smith is like the Kevin Bacon of rock and roll.
Yeah, the 7 degrees of
holy shit.
Of Greg Smith.
He hasn't been in your band, you forget it. So, but what was happening too, what I always thought was cool, and we didn't even know was happening, like in New Jersey, like you had Skid Row, Trickster, and you had that Philadelphia Cinderella thing, and Bon Jovi, but we didn't know like that was happening parallel to this Long Island scene. And Long Island, by the way, we're friendly with the guy Danger. We all came out at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
So like there was a scene starting to happen in Long Island.
Yeah, no, there's so much, the history, and Tom and I have talked about this because, him being a Brooklyn guy and then eventually relocating to Staten Island before becoming an official Jersey guy earlier this summer. But me being always a Jersey guy, we talk about that whole New York, New Jersey scene. He comes from the Lemoore scene, and I'm from the Jersey scene with the Studio Ones and the clubs like that.
Well, we played. Oh God, Valentine played Studio One a few times.
I saw you guys at Studio One.
That was a good place. How about, did you guys see on Saturday Night Live this weekend the Staten Island little parody they did?
I did see. My girlfriend actually showed it to me on YouTube. I didn't see it. It's hysterical.
So funny.
Yeah, with Pete Davidson.
Oh my God, it's so funny. That was really funny. So I got a kick out of it.
And it's spot on with everything. I mean,
spot on. I used to actually work in Staten Island. I used to go there quite often, to tell the truth. So I know it fairly well. And Steve Augeri lives in Staten Island, so I go see him all the time. So I'm fairly familiar with Staten Island, so I thought it was hysterical.
Now, I wanted to go and basically just ask you, I know Valentine, we talked about the Firefest shows that you guys did, 2007, 2008. I saw you guys on Long Island with Trickster.
That was a great show.
I don't remember what year that was, maybe.
It was 2019, it was right. It was sort of like March. It was March of 2019.
No, well, this was prior to that. I think it was at the Crazy Donkey. You guys played.
Oh, what that was with Trickster? Yeah, holy crap, you're right.
That had to be 2010, 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah, that was Trickster and Valentine. Wow, you're right.
I saw that show. And you guys get back together every once in a while. You talked about the 2019 show, which I think you were referring to the tribute show for Todd Confessore.
Correct, and that was such a fun, it was a bittersweet night because. He obviously was a memorial for our friend who was a tour manager for us, Trickster, Danger, and Night Ranger, and we all played. You know what? So it was such an incredible concert, yet bittersweet at the same time because here we were getting together to honor our friend who was passed, but he would have loved to have been at that show. It was kind of bizarre, I have to say.
Yeah. But, now, what I was going to ask you about was, the fact that Valentine has gotten back together over the years in the 2000s. Do you foresee any more Valentine activity?
Yeah, I always say this. this question I always answer this way. It always seems like, just like you said, you answer the question with your question. Every couple of years we get together for some reason.
Yeah.
So if that's the trend, then we're due for a show, I guess, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So no, you know what? There have been a few. I have nothing to announce. So I'm sorry, I don't want to make anything exciting, but there have been a few things I've heard floating around that we would be interested in doing. So.
Oh, okay. Something to look forward to. Excellent.
Yeah, well, listen, never say never. We're all playing, and so if the right thing comes, we're not like opposed to it. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Sure. Great.
There's no bad blood. We're all none of that. We're like all it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
I think we covered everything we wanted.
We covered a lot. You guys, that was a good one. First of all, as a guy who does a podcast interview, you did a great job. You covered everything. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Job.
Thank you.
But it.
Yeah, no, this was great. I was looking forward to this one for sure. And
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time tonight. And yeah, I guess that's probably about it. Hopefully we can talk again down the line at some point.
Yeah, no, you know what? When I think we'll, like I said, the next time we'll talk, when Steve's record is finally finalized, we'll do another one. I'll talk about the songs on that one. Hopefully drag him onto a couple of these things,
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Great
Adam. It was a
questions.
pleasure.
You guys really, you did, like we said, I know you guys for a long time, and you know the history, and that is important because you really asked the questions that get, the really cool under the hood questions. So I appreciate that.
We're on top of our game here.
Thank you.
You are.
Excellent. So
right,
so everybody, hey, Adam Holland from the band Valentine, we appreciate the time. Definitely check out his own podcast, which is Band Forever, and check out the brand new Valentine album, Demos from the Attic, on 20th Century Music.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Always appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you soon, man.
All right.
Take care, brother.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks.
Later, guys.
Bye.